engines out there on an airplane or whatever. He says it'll take you directly to the crash spot. That's very reassuring too.
And the EMTs get there, you're a half hour ahead of the EMTs. So
Yes,
that's a good thing.
exactly.
Good.
That is a different way to look at it.
Rock and roll.
Reconvening, 7 PM. We're going to start with the Bildman lease proposal, LOI, and welcome Mr. Steve Bildman.
Thank you. My name's Steve Billman. Relocated to Jacksonville probably about 5-6 years ago. Still have a business up north. We're right outside of the gate at the Tucson Naval Air Station. Airfield 2 Whiskey 6. We have contracts with Office Naval Research and several government agencies on the Navy base, plus other agencies in the government. Basically, we develop sensors and we operate and test aircraft for the different DoD departments, Southcom, and particularly CENTCOM and some other agencies worldwide. Mainly drug interdiction, anti-terrorist type stuff. Moved down to Jacksonville about 5 years ago. My wife's down at the Mayo. She's fighting cancer, so it kind of made me commute back and forth. Up at St. Mary's County, we developed about 300,000 square foot of industrial park, aviation, hangars, buildings, laboratories. We currently have a UAS test site up there with the University of Maryland, with the SCAR building, with wind tunnels and everything else. Down in Jacksonville with Craig, I kind of got bored a little bit, so I bought Craig Air Center, developed it into Jacksonville Executive Jet Center. Just developed 57,000 square foot and getting ready to develop another 7 acres, probably about another 120,000 square foot there. Getting some contracts. We just got awarded this past year up north. We're looking for a airfield to expand to with 2 different projects. The first project is with the Native Americans and Disabled Vet organization called RISE. They have a program where they want to create a jobs program, and what they want to do is hire disabled vets, local people within the community, and Native Americans. We're looking for an airfield who can fly a 737 into lightly, basically turn it into a jobs program where we dismantle the aircraft, we repurpose the parts, crush the airframe, get it off the airfield is not to create a graveyard. And we've met with several different, gone around the area, and we looked at this as an ideal location to do that program. On the other hand, or the other project that we want to do with our business up north with this research, engineering, development, RED, is we're looking for a test site for some DoD aircraft for sensor development and UAS aircraft. What we'd like to do is come down here and propose a joint public-private partnership where we build our own buildings, our own capital. We lease, do a ground lease with the airport, long-term lease depending on the investment we have. We employ people out of local community, also bring people in, and we do DoD sensor development and testing in UAS aircraft, autonomous aircraft, and manned aircraft. What makes this airport attractive to us is we're right on the back door of some restricted airspace, like we are at Pax River. At Pax River, we have a COA where we can take a UAS, we can take right into restricted airspace. Very easy transition for us and do a lot of testing. With the amount of airspace utilization up at Pax River, the restricted airspace up there, we're trying to find a place that's a little bit more out of the way, autonomous for us to operate with some aircraft and do some testing and development in that nature. So we met up with Tyson through Johnny and basically kind of talked about common goals and ideas of what we could do together. And we decided a few weeks ago that to join forces, because we both want to go in the same direction, and put a proposal in front of the airport to do these 2 different operations. Any questions?
Can you describe the operations in terms of the tempo and the size?
So for the, we'll call it the Operation One, which is the 737, I think there's about 30 aircraft in the pipeline over the next few years to get donated. The Native Americans are funding it. We're going to have two sites. We're going to have an East Coast site and a West Coast site. We'd like to use this airport as our East Coast site. We would build probably a building to at least house one of the aircraft or a fabric tension hangar to do that. And then we look for another building or two for warehousing parts. That would probably be in the neighborhood of about 10 to 15 employees, ground support equipment. There would not be a lot of fuel being purchased for that type of operation, but it would be, it would put the live on the map, and it's a great, we're doing it to help the Native Americans and the veterans. There's not a lot of money in it for us. It's more of a job programs that we're trying to give back to the community. The other organization, we're fairly large. We're probably about a $30 to $40 million CONUS operation, CONUS operations. We doubled that in the last 2 years, and we're looking to double or triple that with some of the contracts we just got awarded over the next 2 to 3 years. So we want to come in with 100% our investment. We're not looking for any outside funding. We're just, looking for an investment. If we put in the airport, if we put in, $2-3 million in hangars, we just want to make sure we have some longevity on the lease where we can make that money back over a period of time. That will bring in some DoD and commercial derivative aircraft that will purchase quite a bit of fuel, which we'll give back to the airport. Over probably after startup construction, I would say probably about, depending on your permitting process here, in Jacksonville, it takes us about 2 years to get a permit. I don't know what the building permit process is in the county here. But the time we go through FAA reviews, permit and everything, it usually, I could say, up in Maryland, I can get through it in about 6 months, be under breaking ground. And down here, it's a little bit different animal. We don't have the St. John's Water Authority to deal with, so it makes stormwater management might be a little bit easier. I think you'll have more acreage that we can use for stormwater management down here than we did at Jacksonville, at Craig. So I'd probably say within 12 to 18 months, we could be breaking ground. Within 2 years, be under roof and probably employ 15 to 20 people starting off. Some of them would be engineering type jobs, pilot jobs, tech jobs, operating aircraft in a test type environment.
So these are 737s, or are you talking about the UAS?
That's the other thing.
The 737s would be a separate.
So what model are the 737? 200s?
1 to 400.
Okay.
The
Max.
older ones are being donated by.
So these are airplane you'd fly in here, disassemble, like maybe keep the ailerons, flaps, engines.
Anything's got value.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you scrap the rest.
We scrapped the rest one.
What's the max landing weight you're talking about bringing in here? These airplanes fairly empty?
They're going to be lightly loaded.
And these are DoD airplanes, or are they commercial?
Commercial airline.
Okay, so you bring them in empty. I was just looking at a
It'll be lighter than your
737.
P3s that are operating.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it looks like a max landing weight on the average 737 is about 150,000, and I think our runway's rated for 150. So
And we
the,
have to be lightly loaded because of the length.
yeah. So the airplanes come in, it's one stop and it's done.
Yep.
You're not talking about putting a control tower in,
Nope.
okay?
You might see between here and the West Coast operation, you might see 3 airplanes a year coming in
Okay.
and get dismantled. And then after we take them apart, we inventory the parts, and then we would crush the airplanes and get rid of the carcasses. We would not have a graveyard of airplanes sitting there.
Okay.
That's one side of the house. The other side of the house is basically UAS autonomous and a bunch of helicopter operations.
Okay.
When you say a bunch of helicopter operations, I mean, what kind of activity are you looking at, like on a daily basis?
When in full swing,
do a lot of test and evaluation. So a little tangent, if you will, backstory. So I pitched you guys last time I was here. Immediately after, I was discussing with Johnny here, a friend of mine. I've worked with Johnny for 10, 12 years now. Know each other quite well, quite literally trusted each other with our lives in Afghanistan and various other places. I was kind of pitching my long-term plan. And he was like, hey man, you need to meet Steve. He's got some things and has a lot more private equity, a lot more experience. He's actually built out airports, as I mentioned to you guys. The expansion of building hangars, building things. Well, full disclosure, I've never done any of that. Steve actually has.
He's got the 8-pack crayons. He has like the sharpener.
Yeah. Johnny's like, hey man, you might need some adult supervision. He gets them into it. So kind of coincidentally, right after that, I met Steve and kind of spitballed some things. So what I'd like to do is I'll leave my proposal there. There's some certain things I can affect immediately. Facilitating some military exercise stuff like Scott and I have, crossed paths with in the past. Having a place to stage aircraft and facilitate exercise and landings is an already immediate thing I can act on. Long term, also partnering with Steve to grow into the UAS space, into the test and evaluation of sensors developments. I've done a lot of work in the past in intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and sensor development things, engineering. There's that on the day-to-day tempo. To answer the question, it's more on a project base. You'll get a project and you get funding, and it might be daily flight ops, 1 to 2 per day for 2 weeks, and then you do some R&D, you do some engineering crunch numbers on it, and then you go back to the drawing board and back out. So it wouldn't be it would ebb and flow.
Would that be typically, or the majority of that being in restricted airspace? Are you talking about over the airport or?
No, we would, operations would be in restricted airspace, just because of the nature of the testing. We're using Geiger mode LiDAR, lasers.
Generally, we'd partner with the mill and use Blanding's restricted airspace if we needed it. We don't want to shut down, GA coming into here. So it's certainly very easy for us to get a go with the mill, which we've done in the past. I did the initial thing into Blanding. I put kind of the DoD face, so our testing with other USG entities into Blanding in 2018, just about. We went over there and got a good COA where we can use that restricted airspace and then just bounce back over to here to house, get fuel, and help out the airport with operations.
And that will continue to drive some fuel cell stuff. That's what I've done. I've worked with Craig in the past to facilitate various special operations aviation units that are working on camp landing, to include the 160th, who didn't really have immediate need to buy gas here, but through some phone calls, they don't care where they get it. There's it over here. So there would be an uptick in that. But the idea would be to grow and expand slowly, hiring people in the local area. Steve has a lot more experience in that. And like I said, I got to know him quite well on this, and it would be best for the airport. I try to be a good steward of the airport as well in everything that I'm doing. So I think he can bring some added value to that and help me expand kind of that vision into the UAS and test stuff. But there's a lot more as far as hiring people and managing projects and
Currently we have contracts with Office of Naval Research and the Army Research Lab. So they're all long-term contracts. We do human factors engineering. How does goggles interface with different sensors? What we're doing. We're starting to do a lot of stuff called augmented reality. Just a lot of testing. Helicopters, UAS. What we'd love to do is establish like a small UAS runway where we don't interfere with general aviation ops. Unfortunately, and I don't want to get in the middle of your previous battles, this would be an ideal UAS runway right here. We'd like to come in and use for aviation use, establish it as a UAS runway. That way it would be on a not to interfere basis with your regular runways. It wouldn't interfere with your clear zone. It wouldn't interfere with your ACUs. We can do a COA with a quarter right over to camp landing with it. The future of aviation is going autonomous. Whether we like it or not, that's the direction it's going to go. And, that's the direction that we've been pursuing. We built a facility up at, they have the ADAs that's around Washington, D.C. So University of Maryland's at College Park. College Park Airport fell within that ADA zone, so they couldn't use it. So we're 7 miles outside of St. Mary's Airport, so we built them about a 14,000 square foot facility to test UASs, and they followed up with the $70,000 research facility with wind tunnels and everything else down there. So we have DoD, we have higher education, and we have engineering all within that small community. What we don't have now is the airspace to do the testing we want to because it's a lot more intense testing. Sensors require a lot more safety. The airspace at Pax River now is very saturated. So now we're looking to bring an entire autonomous test site using the restricted airspace over Camp Landing down to your airport. And we'd be open to other DoD or commercial users. We would not restrict this to ourselves. We have an event up at St. Mary's County where worldwide everybody comes in and they close the airport down for 2 days and UAS fly off. So if we can get your airport on the forefront of thinking autonomous and going into the future, I think it's going to help with your airport growth and where you all might want to go as a community, because that's where a lot of the stuff is, a lot of the aviation.
Do you have any relationship with, or would you anticipate any involvement with the University of Florida?
We would get involved with the University of Florida. We would build a very nice research facility here, and then we would get involved with, being involved with universities is very important because you need the educational aspect to go along with the engineering. They use it for their students. They use it. It works out really well with what we do up north.
Perfect.
When you can dovetail everything together. And this is kind of a unique facility because we're close to Metropolitan with Gainesville, with Jacksonville. We're kind of in the center. We're not, we're a very easy drive. From University of Maryland down to my airport, 2 Whiskey 6, it's about an hour, 20-minute drive, hour, 15-minute drive. We're about the same length here. You got several major universities. So you're in a perfect corridor, being close to Route 10, 75, everything kind of comes together. And it's an ideal location. We had the right type of vision and development mindset and capital behind it. And that's what we're looking to do. This is not a quick turnaround. We don't do this in a year or 2 years. This is going to be a 10 or 15-year plan. We put about a $40 million investment into 2 Whiskey 6 up north. And we did that starting in 1985. And we're built out facility-wise now. There is no more land to expand. So here we have plenty of acreage. You have plenty of expansion opportunity. You have plenty of airspace. You're right on the fringe of metropolitan areas, very commutable distance. So when you start looking at everything, it's an ideal location. But it's before we even probably turn a profit, we're going to be 5 to 8 years into it. It's just going to take a lot of capital and a lot of work.
How big are these? Are these Predators? How big a machine are we talking about?
So up in Maryland, we're dealing with quadcopters, under 50 pounds, and we operate at 400 feet or less.
These are very small.
These are small. We probably go to like a class 3. Maybe a class 4. We're not going to go to global hawks or anything.
How large does that go?
We could go up to 120 to 140 pounds.
I mean, what are we talking about wingspan wise? Are we talking about something
Size
less
of a
than 10 feet?
172,
Okay,
something like that.
Leave or jump 20 size.
okay.
Yeah, so right now, the big push is building disposable drones. A lot of activity off of the coast right here, where they do fleet exercises, where they'll take disposable drones and they'll swarm a warship with like 5 or 6 or maybe 10 drones at a time for them to start shooting at and trying to use their self-defense systems. So you don't realize it, but there's a lot of testing because of Mayport and some of the other bases. Savannah, there's a lot of testing because we actually come down to all the radar surveillance offshore, and we do a lot of airborne data linking using Starlink, where we go and clear the range of all the ships so the warships can fire. So we're down here probably once or twice a month, where we used to be down here once or twice a year. A lot of our other activities off of Dam Neck, the Bay Capes, where they come out of Norfolk. So these are the 2 big areas on the East Coast. Right now, they're doing a lot of testing. I could even see us getting into light manufacturing with disposable UASs and everything on top of the research and development down the road. Right now, the drones are the biggest threat to warships. You can defend against 3 or 4 drones, but when they send in a swarm of 400 drones,
Well, I mean, I think we all see what's going on in Ukraine and Russia right
Oh, yeah.
now. It's just, it's got a lot of people scared because this is something we've never had to defend against. you know, it's like you say, a swarm of wasps. Aircraft are equipped with ADS-B
Yes.
that broadcast on civilians so we can see them
Yes.
taking off and landing?
Mhm.
Okay. How many are you talking about having here at one time possibly?
We probably only fly for testing reasons, 1 or 2 at a time.
Okay,
So, you know, we could be under production and there could be 15, 20 different classes or different types under production at any one time or doing research with. But, you know, usually we'll flight test, we'll collect telemetry data, we'll see how the flight test went. There's a lot of science behind it of what we're doing. And then it dovetails into some stuff, some of the stuff they're doing with close air support out of Camp Landing.
we already have a guy that comes down here. He comes down here seasonally. They fly up in Seattle. But the drones he has, or I think he calls them drones, they do vertical takeoff, but they're fixed wing. And he's got ADS-B reporting on his. His also has strobe lights that flash, so they're fairly visible. He doesn't have a fixed connection here. He just comes in and uses a little land. The next question would be, are these things going to be flown from here with your pilot on the ground here and spotters? Or are you going to be flying them from MacDill Air Force Base in a room down
No,
there?
so what ideally is we take off and land here on a,
Okay.
like I said, we can dedicate a UAS airstrip. We would escort them out. So we have a COA. And what we do is we escort them either by helicopter or fixed wing through the COA. Once we get to the restricted airspace, then we're free to do what we want. We have no
Okay.
restrictions at that point
But
in
where
time.
is it being flown from?
We'd like to take off and land here at the airport.
No, not the physical craft. Where's the pilot flying from?
The pilot will be flying from here,
Okay,
yes.
so he'll be based here.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, with Desert Storm and everything, we had guys flying out of Tampa. The pilots were in Tampa.
Yeah, no. Everything.
It's that sophisticated, okay.
The ground stations and control stations will be developed here. So when we develop a UAS, usually we'll develop a Connox box that is a
Okay.
control station that goes with it.
Okay.
So everything will be controlled out of down here.
If you would, could you explain to the group what a COA is? I don't think everybody knows what that is.
So a COA is an agreement with the FAA, basically where we can block off a set of airspace under a certain condition, like we can take a block of airspace, a corridor, up to 400 feet. So we can transit at or below 400 feet with a certain size UAS with certain airspeeds. And there'll be restrictions on that COA, like we have to visually escort the aircraft to and from restricted airspace.
Weather conditions are dictated, weather pattern 5005.
Yeah.
So it's almost like an IFR route or a vector route, Victor airway that you're staying, or you're going on a known airway, is that?
Well, it's an operational agreement with the FAA.
Yes, exactly.
And
But
whatever.
it's for a specific route.
First specific.
Or a block of
yes.
airspace, doesn't need to be a route.
Or a block of airspace,
10,000
okay.
feet Here,
Yeah.
and let's say that they can put one like the one over at Blanding now, that's current there. We can operate higher, we have an agreement that we have to go into the FAA to get a higher, but there's one already there that you can't fly over it up to X
Okay.
1,000 feet or something, I'm making it up. And then you can make one higher, and then it wouldn't be activated all the time, the tube of airspace to get over there. You'd only activate it when you need it, and then it would be closed after, we'd call and say at 2000Z, it's
You
closed.
file a NOTAM when it's active, and you just file a NOTAM FAA.
The other thing we found out with and I'm talking about Billy Price, have you met him? There's an electronic veil around Camp Landing. Obviously, you're operating vehicles that are DOD or DOD approved. That was one of his problems, is he was telling me if he gets too close to Camp Landing, that veil will either force his aircraft to land or it'll return to home. Yours, I take it, are approved to go into Blanding's airspace.
Can you get that guy's card for me? I don't believe him. But I hope that's true. 'Cause-
What he's talking about, it's just that.
No, what he explained to
Civilian
us-
drones will do that, they can't.
Yes,
fly-
if you go,
Oh, yeah, that's geofencing, they geofence it. That's-
yeah, exactly, that's what it is, a geofence.
Yeah, ours are not.
But because he was with, his, I think, were designed for police in other countries and maybe some drug interdiction. But he did tell us when he first approached, when Maria was here, he talked to us. And said that he had to be careful. He was trying to get on camp landing and he couldn't, but they've got that bail, and like I say, it's a geofence, so that isn't an issue.
That's within the drone software. It's nothing that Camp Landing's broadcast.
Right.
Have you actually briefed this to the camp planning leadership?
No, it hadn't, actually outside of, special unit, the 20th group is aware of some, and then another tenant on basement student management writ large, no. And a lot of this would be contractually under probably, aviation tests and research development records and things over there. So that would dictate who agrees.
So I think between, the range spaces and, it might be a challenging scheduling, issue to have the airspace you need when you need it and not them, with the other
That's what's good about
Mars and all
We-
that.
We can work around other people's, we're not on the time schedule, we're on a crunch. So, we would go to central schedules, whoever controls the airspace, and say, okay, we want to make the airspace active this time. It's not being used. So we would go through the schedule on that.
They own their airspace, right?
It's controlled by DoD.
Scheduling. What's that?
There's central schedules, there's a DoD schedule that schedules the airspace. So it'll go hot or cold.
I got a question. Where are your hangars gonna be built? Have we decided? Have you
No.
proposed
This
anything?
is all proposed.
I know, but you gotta have an idea of where they're gonna go.
Well, what we'd like to do, for the, basically the 737 operations is park them here on this old runway taxiway. I know they have some P3s parked here. And then for the UAS operations, we'd like to take this piece of land right here if it becomes available. And actually, we'll come in, pave, develop a nice UAS runway. And that way it would not interfere with your, current aviation operations. Everything we're gonna do is under FAA grant assurances. So everything we're doing is protected by grant assurances. It's encouraged by grant assurances. It's all 100% aviation activities, aviation related. The R&D portion, the operation portion is everything we do.
So if we get in litigation with that current tenant, I'm sure the judge would have an injunction that would hold that. We wouldn't be able to do anything. So, and I'm gonna pivot off his question. So you're talking about the 737 and these UAVs or UAS, whatever they are. If you were to obtain, what would be your first, let's just talk in terms of acreage. How much acreage would you want to begin with? And I assume you want to reserve land next to it for expansion in the future?
Yeah.
Would that be fair to assume?
Yeah.
So you're starting out with maybe 150 or 175 by,
We're probably looking at 10 acres
um,
to develop
so
for buildings.
would the 737s be dismantled in a hangar?
No, we dismantle them outside.
Okay.
Build a fabric tension hanger around.
Okay, kind of like this over here?
Yeah.
Or something like that?
Yeah.
And I guess, obviously, you'd have to be in compliance with all DEP and all that stuff and environmental. So you'd want expandability, but
I want to work with Craig, do an entire investigation report with Tyson, Craig, come back and give you all a
so
written
are you
solid
wanting to come
proposal.
back a year from now, or is this something y'all want to?
Oh, no, I'm talking by your next meeting.
Okay, so I don't know how we can do anything.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a
Yes,
question?
please.
Mr. Philman, you provide us with a letter of intent for the developing of the aircraft recycling
Yes.
portion.
Mhm.
But I haven't seen anything, I don't know if we've gotten it. So would you provide a similar
Mhm.
sheet that would describe what you've just been sharing with us
Mhm.
with maybe some proposed ideas as far as acreage and, what that campus would look like?
Yes, no question. I can have that
Very good.
to you by
I think
the,
it sounds very promising for the growth of the airport.
like I said, we're looking, 5-10 years from now. We're not looking to be an overnight sensation.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
This is a steady, slow, long-term growth, and it's going in the direction that aviation is going. And, we're coming to an airfield where there's plenty of airspace, there's plenty of land, there's plenty of opportunity. It's all within commuting distance to where, a lot of residents live, and I think it'll be a good jobs program to bring some people into the community.
He's pretty humble. I encourage him to go to 256 at airport. He's built an ecosystem down there with hundreds of employees from the local area. You know, he didn't bring in talent from all over the place. There, you know, the jobs and the stuff. I mean, there are certainly going to be some jobs that you import. We're good at that, right, in aviation, but there are a lot of jobs that are just really good for this area. You know, I'm also from this area, I live in the Palm Coast. But he's done a tremendous job up there. I mean, there's the cheeseburgers alone. I thought one of your better accomplishments. But he has a little restaurant in there, and it's tremendous. It's like an ecosystem around it. Couple hundred employees. It's amazing.
Yeah, we have Huntington Angles. We're doing a lot of autonomous work out there at the University of Maryland. We're entertaining some other groups, big DoD presence. And you got to realize, you know, DoD's got nowhere else to go with JA right now. You know, they're kind of tapped out. You know, there's a lot of green space at Cecil still, but there's not a lot of investment being put into it. You do have runway length there, which you don't have here, but like I said, autonomous, you're not operating off an 8,000-foot runway. You're operating off of, you know, 1,000 foot or less.
Right.
What's that airport identifier again?
2 Whiskey 6.
Worth checking
Two
out.
Whiskey Six.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Two Whiskey Six.
Being familiar with working back through the past and being out of 2 weeks to Whiskey 6 in the area, it still has an amazing.
If you
flavor.
if you Google DMTU LLC, you'll see some pictures of it.
And that's something just to add to my portion of this too, is I have 2 hangars here. I'm a local resident. I fly here. You know, I've got a dog in this fight for the long haul too. I wouldn't back or be a part of something I thought was gonna be something opposing to general aviation. That's kind of what my original drive was, what I plan on doing. There's a lot of catalysts there for not just job development, partnerships with the local community, STEM, as aircraft are being taken apart in that process. There's even, you know, A&P type work that could be learned, could be traded, could be partner, and we happen to have, you know, David here has a wealth of experience in the aviation A&P side of the house. So there's a ton we can do, but also it's just exciting. 2 still has an awesome GA feel. There's a lot of development that goes on, but on a Sunday flying, it's a normal pancake breakfast restaurant, you know, airport. That's kind of what, to me personally, I want to see is the measured and scaled growth of the Keystone Airport, but with still a focus on the community and the GA airspace. And that's what I'm pledging to make my role in this be is, you know, I'm attending here to fly. I'm resident here. So I church on Sunday, so I'll bring that part to the board too. And I trust these guys with the plan.
Well, I agree with David Kirkland. I think it'd be very interesting to see some more detail that he could show us on what his vision is.
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll have a letter to Craig by the end of this week detailing the UAS stuff and what we'd like to do. And then probably set up a meeting with the next 2 or 3 weeks to do site surveys to see what's possible, where we can go with it. Sitting for the last 2 hours, I know you guys have some issues you got to resolve. You know, so, you know, I think y'all need to resolve those as quick as possible. You know, and that will open up for other aviation growth. I don't think if you resolve those issues, it's, you know, I think there's going to be some grant assurance issues, I'll be honest with you. I've seen it before at other airports. So.
One other concern I've got, and again, it does sound like a good opportunity. I'll agree with that, but we don't want a junkyard here. We already had that. The city about 20 years ago had to have the guy clean out back behind the hangar. He had junk airplanes out there for, you know, 500 feet going back. What is your turnaround on the dismantling of the 737? That's got to be a pretty monumental task. Are you looking?
So we're looking
kind
to
of land
dismantle
6
the
months?
aircraft within about a 3 to 4 month period, and then crush it and
Okay, and it would be removed from the
Uh-huh.
site.
Yeah,
Okay,
nothing would be left. We don't want a
okay.
P3 graveyard.
Yeah,
How many would be on site?
2 to 3,
Okay.
no more than 2 to 3 at a time.
And you're willing to, I mean, you think you can get the grant assurances or whatever to put in a tarmac or whatever, put in a ramp? And I know this is all gonna take time, but,
We're funded through this, through the what's that?
The Navajo.
Navajo Nation, and they're
Okay.
funded to the tune of millions of dollars.
okay,
So, and this is not the only location we're doing. We're actually looking at a location out on one of their reservations. And we're actually building about a $20 million building out there
okay.
to house everything. So this is, it's backed by the federal government.
You would start out with a tent-like structure like this and maybe graduate up to a brick and mortar, or I mean, a
Yeah,
steel.
yeah. The name of the organization we're working with is Arise, and it's shared by a Native American veteran. And this was his vision, and he brought us in to help us with his vision.
So why don't, I mean,
One thing, and I'm gonna leave it alone, but you're pointing at this right here where there's an existing tent.
Yeah.
I have suggested, as we try to negotiations in this lease, if it is in fact, we need to try to get some of this side of the airfield back. But this is an FYI for you. In World War II, this was, or, you know, this was runway 1634.
Yeah.
So there's basement, these are still existing. This is an old taxiway with all the kiosks that the airplanes parked on. I personally think this is the area where I'd like to see your development is over there, but that would be up to the board body. And that is if we can get that, a portion of that land back through negotiations or however it works out. And then there is the possibility that things go south and maybe this does become available. But I just would be, if you're wanting something pretty soon, I don't know how we could agree to something when we have imminent litigation.
He still needs to provide us details on his proposal anyway.
Right.
let's
right.
get the letter of intent.
Yeah.
And include in that as well, Mr. Billman, just some suggested locations on the airport,
Okay.
if you want to do that. And then once we get all that information back, then we can
And,
move forward.
I mean, we're looking for the low-hanging fruit infrastructure
Sure.
wise. Okay, we don't want to go in and spend $5 million on infrastructure and build $1 million building. Economically, it does not work for us. Okay, we're looking for a place where there's already, you know, water, sewer, you know, or out here it might be septic, I don't know. So we're looking for a place that, you know, the infrastructure is pretty much in place and we can get into fairly easy. When you have to start building infrastructure, you add years and years and years to the development. And we just, you know, we're not going to wait 5 to 10 years.
Yep.
You know, the way we've made our airport very successful up north is we put in all the infrastructure under a state bond, and then we were site ready. So when we had a tenant, the building went up. We had the next tenant, building went up. Next tenant, building went up. So when someone came to say, hey, you know, can you build us a building? Well, the airport down the road saying, well, 5 years, because we got to do the site plan, we got to do this. I said, I can have your building up in 6 months, you know, when you want to sign the lease. So by having the vision to put the infrastructure in first, and we were able to, you know, our county didn't do it. We actually went to the state. We got, you know, grant money to put in all the roads, sewer, the taxiways. After we put that all in, then it was easy, you know, because somebody will wait 6 months, 8 months to come do a project. When you say it's going to be 5 years, you're just not going to have any takers.
Very good. Thank you.
No, thank you all for your
Thank
time.
you.
Appreciate your time. I know it's been a long afternoon.
We're informed about. I'll update the Wikipedia page.
Thank you all.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time
Appreciate y'all.
and information.
Thank you, sir.
General,
we appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Rob.
Hey, we don't have food at every meeting either. Don't look at that as to come back and freeload.
Appreciate the chocolate.
All right.
Moving on.
Other topics. We have a performance appraisals that you guys had the opportunity to look at on the last, what's that?
We still gonna cover the Cloudbusters?
Yeah,
location
I'm
in there?
trying to decide whether we want to still cover that or not.
You can table it if you
Yeah,
want to.
I think I'm going to table it. There's still a lot of questions that we have as to whether it's considered an aeronautical activity or not. And the lease just got renewed as of 31 May anyway, so it's not like we can do a whole lot with it at this meeting. But it is a concern, just kind of to throw out there, you know, where their lease is currently located in the middle of that area, that would also make pretty good growth opportunities for some of these other potential people. And whether or not they're necessary to be where they are, or they could be moved to other places. So I think it's something that we're just gonna table and move on to these other topics. A couple that aren't listed on here that I wanted to get to were just the appraisal that everybody should have gotten a chance to look at last time and make comments to. I've got my comments. If you've got any for me, give them to me. But that's going to be what we're going to start initiating here in the next month or two with giving Craig his feedback on his performance appraisal.
So we had a draft of that document passed
Right.
out last
Yes.
meeting.
Yep,
And so you're asking for comments on that
Yep.
draft.
exactly.
When would you like that comments by?
This,
This meeting?
So,
that's what we said last meeting.
That's-
By
you're
the
right.
June meeting, you give me the comments.
yeah, the,
If you need more time, I can give you more time. 1 June, I think, is when we're owed to the city manager.
actually,
1 July,
1 July,
right?
On July.
what was asked at last month's meeting was if you wanted to change any of the question or any of the verbiage within that draft document, to have that back to Chair so we can make those updates.
Yeah.
Then we will send you a version that's not a draft version. It's what
But it's
we
usable.
actually use for the performance
Yeah.
evaluation.
And that we can type in, correct? Convert it to a Word, maybe?
Yeah, well, I'll get with Craig. We'll figure the logistics out for, if you can just it can be fillable. If
Right.
it's like a PDF that can be fillable, we'll sort those out.
So if you'll get those back to me as soon as possible.
I didn't have any changes on mine.
Okay,
I
I got
don't think I
some
had any
comments,
really,
but
but
they're
I can
small,
look at it one more
couple of
time.
things to add. Okay, so it's budget time, and we were talking about setting up a budget workshop sometime this month to be able to kind of prep the battlefield for 2026. And I'd like to know if you guys have ideas on when would be the best time to do a budget workshop.
And this month,
Yes.
this month first.
And I realize if everybody can't make it, that's okay.
Good to hold Dan back.
Okay, no more food. Or no more bags of potato chips anyway.
You want me to go get the vending machine? No, we got a hand truck down there. I can just bring the whole thing down.
Leave me alone. I'm hungry.
Uh,
What week?
What
What were you looking at?
June what?
24?
June 24,
I'm gonna be out of state that week,
whole week.
but
I would like you around since you've got more experience than
Yeah.
me on this.
Okay, how about backing up to the 17th?
I will be gone all that week.
Whole week. How about when do you get back, David?
I'll be back on the 27th.
We could do the 30th.
Yep.
Although the next day is our July meeting. 1st of July is our July meeting.
Will we, didn't we do it before where if it falls like that, we move it to like the 8th because the city council would be on the
We talked
Monday?
about that.
Oh, that's right. There won't be any
You're not
meeting.
meeting in July?
That's right.
Oh, I thought you had the 8th.
We put on the whole 4th of July. We just cancel that month of it.
Okay.
We could move
I'm
our.
good with the 30th.
Charlie, are y'all gonna be back on
August 30th.
for August 4th?
You make
You're August 4th, okay. I'm good on the 30th.
24th.
Yeah, that was like the 26th. But I know they said, some people said they weren't gonna be there that whole week.
Next week I could do 19 and 20, if that works better for people.
I'll be gone all that week.
Okay.
I'm already.
So besides Bobby, anybody else that make the 30th?
I can be on June
June
Yeah,
30th?
June 30th.
June 30?
2028.
June
I
30th.
I can do the 30th.
I'm available.
I can do the 30th.
We got a majority there. I know Buck's got a real job too.
No, I can be there.
Okay.
What time?
What do you guys like better, morning or afternoon?
Either one's good for me.
Open that door.
What's that?
I'm flexible.
Buck, do you have
I'm
a
flexible.
preference? Scott, morning or afternoon?
I'm good either way. Just make sure you bring food for Buck, but,
That's right, that's right.
you know,
So you want to do
How long are
morning?
you anticipating it, the meeting?
Maybe 2 hours at the most.
9 to 11?
Okay, that works for me.
Sold.
9 AM,
Yeah,
got it. Okay.
all right. All right.
That's the problem, it makes noise, just even in the back.
Appraisal, we did budget workshop. We want to talk about the milling pile.
We can,
Yeah,
just,
yeah, why don't you brief us real quick?
well, it's been here for multiple years, Scott knows about the whole thing, but it was just proposed to me that by another employee that he would like to have an eye washing station up by the field farm to do field testing. Couple things he had identified, and I would never make a decision to remove that pile on my own, you know, whether it be just get rid of it or to sell it. But I did like his idea that if we're not going to use the pile, we could sell it, and that would then fund his eye washing station or whatever.
Where's the pile at?
I don't know, where's the pile?
It's
Behind the
kind
key
of
hangers?
over behind the Lockheed. It's on a hard stand back there by the old Electris.
So it's milling that we collected when we did the Alpha refurb, right?
I
It's a
believe so.
taxi
Like I
lane.
said, Scott.
taxi lane project.
Yeah, so,
You know, it is sitting there and it's getting hard. I mean, it literally melts,
Yeah.
almost melts back together. And the last time I got into it, I had a personal backhoe at that time, and I was able to bring it out and just break. I mean,
it gets harder the longer it sits though, right?
Keith had mentioned, you know, hey, I know somebody that would buy that, and we always know people that would buy it, but I would say we could sell the majority of it. We gave like 3 or 4 loads to the Sportsman's Club because their road is in such a bad state of, and that road ultimately is ours. I mean, it's going to a lease that we own, but
Yeah.
I'd say you could sell the majority of it, you know, and just keep some for patches. I don't know, when is this runway gonna be redone? Is that still a couple of years away?
That's several years out.
I mean, if we give it all away, we have nothing for patching, like but I would say the majority of it could be sold. It wouldn't be a problem.
Okay. I don't know if we need a motion for that, or it's just kind of,
Does the guy?
Sell it?
The guy he's gonna have do it, can that guy load it? Does he have
It
the,
would be his responsibility.
okay, yeah.
See if you can
But
get a
I don't
million.
even know if there's enough there to fully fund, like, I don't have any hard numbers. It was just one guy that was interested, actually looked at the pile. He never admitted to come and buy them. There's no real factual. It was just, that's why I didn't want to make it a agenda item or necessarily take a motion. It was just an idea of what do we do with these?
I make a motion that you find somebody to sell it to. Or whatever that is, it's sitting there.
What's most of the pile, you know, what's that mean?
All of it, we don't
That's
need
not
it.
what Scott just said.
Oh, okay.
Well, if y'all don't feel the need to keep any, we can sell it
That's
all.
up to y'all.
but
What do you think?
It is
we
hard
need
to
it?
say. It's a pretty big pile, though. I mean, it's probably 10 or 11 feet up. And I don't know, 30 feet across or 40
Wow,
feet.
well, see what you can get. And if we need,
If
leave
the
it
guy
1 or
says the
2
only way
tons.
to do it is to take it all, that's the only way it's gonna be worth my
Right.
while, just do it.
Right.
And in a pinch,
When I get numbers, I will send an email to the board and
you know,
just let you know
Yeah, sounds good.
before I take.
Me
any
too.
official action.
it's reasonable to get rid of it.
Okay.
Then we can buy more Lay's potato chips. you know,
Yes. I will fund
and A portion now
Fund it.
to that.
All right,
So wait a minute, we have a motion. We never did get a second, and we don't
There
have.
you go.
I'll second it.
Okay.
all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Moving on. Vice Chair, Aviation Education Chairman, Mr. Dagenet. Do you have anything for the group?
No, sir.
Did you, going back, and I'm like, I know you passed the Cloudbusters. Did we already cover the west access road in that earlier conference?
Yeah, we talked
Is that what
We've
that was?
already covered that. yeah.
I didn't know if there was something else or something like that.
Aviation Chairman, Mr. Fryer.
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Safety and Security Chairman,
Just have there that Craig and I just recently, we performed a quarterly stormwater pollution prevention plan inspection, and that's just essentially going around and making sure drains are operating properly and drainage ditches are clear and free of debris and retention areas and all, just in preparation for any storm issues, and as well as making sure that that the hangars and all don't have any hazmat situations, possible contaminants that could get into any of those. So everything looked good for the most part. Everything we've come across, one little small minor issue around one of our maintenance areas that just some cleanup work has to be done there, just getting rid of some old stuff. But other than that, I told Craig I would volunteer to kind of take that upon myself to start doing that. It's one of those things. It's a good way to be on the grounds and then just kind of checking those kind of things, and it falls under my purview. So I'm like, okay, I can do this. It's easy as long as I don't come across any moccasins.
I know Craig appreciates it too.
Yeah. Brief him a
When
little bit.
was that completed, Bobby?
That was, I don't have the date written down right in front of me right at the moment. But
It was in May.
yeah,
Quarterly.
yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
But we need to get Bobby set up online with an account. He has to do annual reports once a year online, I think. And we're just figuring all that out, but I thought it made sense to have him do it. He wants to get out there and see the airport firsthand, and
Absolutely.
And I told Craig also, that if there's any major issues or anything that I have questions about, obviously I would, hey, take a picture. What do you think about this? So again, I always, I kind of give him the disclaimer all the time that, I'm not trying to overstep any boundaries or anything like that, or his position. And, I'd want to help him out.
He's already told me how much he appreciates your help out there.
So, and that's the thing. And I just told him, I said, if I got any major questions and all, because I don't, there's a lot of it, it's all a new learning process. So
Yeah.
I will keep him in the loop.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, Natural Resource Conservation Chairman, Ms. Hall.
Okay, so y'all have a handout, and what I first want to do was, especially because we have some new board members, it's the one with the 2025, 26 silviculture. Actually, it says site operation, forest management plan, there you go. That's the new title, forest management plan proposed. And what I first want to do is kind of revisit where we were last year. So last year, we had a new plan, a new stewardship plan. We saw about trying to get, putting together a plan with the county forester. So a plan was put in place. We agreed to it. We wanted to be part of the certified farm, tree farm. And we had a workshop. Was it a couple weeks ago? I don't know why, but I can't find it in my calendar now. But a couple weeks ago, we had a forestry workshop where we kind of reviewed, and for others, showed what the plans and stuff were. If you looked at the plan, this is not part of what I gave you, but if you look in the booklet, and we showed this at the forestry thing, there was a 15-year plan for what to do for, some suggestions that Carlton made for what we should do for each one of the stands. So we've basically done, between last year and what I'm proposing this year, we will have pretty much done what was all suggested there. So that's what my proposal is covering we're not adding any land. It's basically what we sprayed last year is to go back, and this is under the proposal, go back and we will do some mechanical work, which I had a contractor out here so he could look at it, tell me what he thought it might cost to get this stuff on the ground, because there's so much vertical vegetation. It would be scary to burn it. So if we get it on the ground though, now you're dealing with a whole different thing. I mean, I think it should burn pretty clean, and that's gonna be perfect to come back and hand plant. So we'd be hand planting, there wouldn't be any more, there wouldn't be a tractor out there, V-blade, opening up stuff, moving stuff around. It would just, basically, we should be able to just plant it. One of the things that I discovered in looking all around and everything, and is that there are places where some of these larger oaks and stuff are clustered. They're dead, which is good because they're not, won't be competing. But you're not gonna get a hand planter in there. It's, when we burn, it might make a difference, but some of those clumps, when this guy comes through and does the mechanical, he's gonna end up going where he can go. Because this is not a pushing job, this is go where you can go. So you're talking about, trees maybe that big, or small or whatever. He'll just be going over them and it'll just be cutting them up. So we will end up with little islands and stuff out there, which is actually, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. You'll have nice little, it'll break things up a bit or whatever, but taking that into account, I was able to lower the number of acres because there's gonna be stuff that they will not plant and that he will not do. The nice thing is I don't have to know exactly, I had to come close, but this contractor and most of them have GPS. And they can actually show exactly what they treat. So that means what they didn't treat, you don't get charged
What do you mean
for.
by treat?
Treat is where they run that equipment over to chop things up. If he didn't chop up over here because it was thick, it won't show up on the map and it won't be calculated in the acres. So that's good on our part. So you'll only be paying for what he actually did the work on. So that's why I was able to lower some of the acres and everything and just kind of estimated how many acres we're actually going to plant in like December or whatever, December or January.
So that's what's estimated under A?
That's what
And-
this is the full plan.
Yeah.
And under A is that actual mechanical. And what I did was, and we'll have to agree, I don't know if it's, but I believe, and Scott can back me up on this, I believe we still had like a $10,000 buffer from what we spent on the spraying. There was still, we only ended up spending only like 35, and I think we had budgeted 45. Does that sound right to you?
I remember 30.
No, it was at least 35, and that's what we paid. That was what
I
we paid for
thought it
spraying.
was 40, and then somebody suggested, just to be sure, 45. That's
I
what,
think it was a buffer thing that was in there, but I don't know that that's
Got our
still there.
notes.
Yeah, I don't know that that's
That's the
still there, but
minute.
that was my recollection too, just like Scott said, that it was like, well, if that's wrong, and the price comes in different, then maybe,
and the other thing, if you recall, it wasn't in the budget, it was like an amendment. to the
emergency
budget.
fund.
And then y'all said, I think you and Craig said after looking at the numbers, we got plenty of money. And that's why I thought it went from 40 to 45. I could be wrong.
well, I thought,
So let me
go ahead.
add in.
Yes,
So plan was initially, we were gonna convert an bank account that we had that was labeled construction and make that a,
Contingency.
no, that was, we did have a contingency fund, but that was for a contingency.
Right.
This $100,000 was, account was meant to be used as a capital improvement fund.
Yes.
We bought our F-150 pickup truck from that was 40-some thousand dollars. The plan was to spend whatever the amount was out of that capital improvement fund, but I later found out from our CPA that the spraying and anything that we're not acquiring that has value cannot be considered a capital improvement.
so,
That 30-some thousand it was spent, I mean, it is what it is, but it was spent from a place, I guess, just airport funds at this point. I don't know that it was ever really truly budgeted for, and we couldn't label it as what we thought we could, so I just wanted to add.
So, as I understand it too, we were expecting to get a grant to pay for.
We were hoping that we would get, some sort of cost share or whatever on
Right.
that, but we did not.
So I'm thinking out loud, in my opinion, we're not here to operate a tree farm. We're here to operate an airport. So we use the trees as required to help us operate the airport safely and smartly, and obviously to be good stewards for the environment. My opinion is that the forest management plan has to pay for itself. It has to be a zero-sum game because we don't have the funds to be able to willy-nilly go out and start mowing down almost $100,000. It would be $100,000 of money that we would have put into this forest management plan without a dime coming to the airport. So what I'm wondering is why can't we start picking places where we're going to have income from forestry and use that income from forestry to offset these other costs of managing the forestation that we have smartly. I just don't see a scenario where we should spend a dime of airport money on forestry management. The forestry management plan has to account for this continuous cycle of cutting down trees, using that to then pay for the management of
And that's the way it
other
should be,
portions. Right.
but that wasn't the way that it was
Well,
managed.
why wouldn't we start out with the timber income from
Did
cutting?
you find that? Did Mary?
Yeah, we looked
find all
into
that?
it. Mary, she gave us she did a lot of work to try to figure it out. It was hard. The question that Scott had brought up at our workshop was, we apparently, I don't know, 10 years ago or something, cut down trees.
That far back, in the 10 years, we've probably done it twice that I'm aware
I
of.
think the most she came up with was like 80 grand that had identified that may have been timber income. But it just went into the general fund, and at the time, we were also paying for a lawsuit that was costing us into six figures, and so that money basically got absorbed as opposed to being probably reintroduced into the forest management, which in my opinion would have been the best way to handle it. But I mean, I wasn't here then, and they had their own challenges, that money income, I'm sure, was a challenge before Rockland came and those kinds of things. So the bottom line to me is, with all of the other capital improvements that we have coming up, we got a $200,000 roof that needs to go on the Rockland building. We've got, and we may have this other lawsuit that we're going to be paying for when Fern finishes seeing our things. So I just don't think that it's wise for us to be spending airport money on forestry management. The forestry management program has to fund forestry
Yeah,
management.
the question
That's my
is
opinion.
do we have a stand that we could harvest some
We looked at that.
revenue today?
We looked at that.
Yeah, we've got, so the 2026 plan is actually to thin stand 2, which is about 210 acres. Now, thinning is not going to get you the same kind of revenue that a clear cutting would.
It was 3-row or something, third row.
Yeah, third row thinning, selection in between, and I couldn't even begin to hazard how much that would be, and, you're going to have to make sure you get a good contractor, good logger, because thinning is an art.
None of the forestry management plan incorporates.
No, it doesn't use anything from the airport road north or around.
So we could potentially use leased land to do our first clear cut, and then,
But the only problem is now you're working, the thinning makes more sense because you're not having to take that money and use it to plant more trees. But if you did a clear cut, now you're back to square one. Now you've got more site prep you gotta do, more planting you gotta do. And the idea was we were trying to play catch up so that we could make this a sustainable thing instead of just cutting, which was what
So-
we've done
so
for the last
really,
10
The
years.
thing that would be most efficient would be to do that thinning.
Do the thinning to offset
to
offset some of the costs, but it's not gonna offset all the costs.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. And
but why couldn't we clear cut in those areas that I just pointed to?
you can, but then you're gonna turn around and you're gonna have to have this plus that much money to be able to get that into production.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. We're gonna have to have a plan to replant what we clear cut.
Yes,
But, so in the areas that Chairman was talking about, though, that's all that we would want to leave vacant anyway for future development. because.
Oh, you're saying no replanting?
Yeah, no replanting.
Ah.
Replant there because those could be developed, that's beachfront property
Right,
anyway.
that's true.
So,
Oh, okay, yeah.
If you can have done, if you can identify and actually get someone to pay you a decent price for it, that would be ideal for money that would just be available. Because you don't have to put it back into site prep. Now, the only thing is that once you cut it, it becomes that. And then at some point, you got to come back again and do something to it if you get a tenant, you know,
have to keep it
you'll have to
clear.
clear it again.
Keep it clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would, yeah, you got to find a way to keep it clear once you've done it. That's the
so
issue.
when we did this section, because it had a variety of oak and pine, part of that whole project was that, okay, we're going to clean it up completely. And some of that was actually done in-house. But we then had a bid for someone to come in and actually prep the land, drill it, and seed it. And that's the result you get. So that's the other
What do you mean?
process.
For new plants, for new trees?
No, for just plain grass.
The
Plain
field-
grass.
The fields.
For plain grass.
They convert.
So if you wanted that area potentially that we would clear cut for future development to be already cleared and, you know, basically shovel ready for somebody to move in to build something on it, you would have to not only clear cut it, but you'd have to go in, de-stump it, grade it,
And that is not cheap.
drill it, seed it,
Yeah.
plant it with seeds.
And then we have to continually mow it.
And then you gotta mow it, but that's easy.
That's not getting mowed over there, right?
Yeah, the field.
Yeah, it is.
The field's right
Field
there.
right here? Oh, I thought you were talking about those woods.
No,
over
no,
there.
no, the field.
No, the field.
No, they
Free
took
grass.
something that looked
Parking lot.
like the FAR thing and turned it into this close thing.
That's some trees in it over there, but that part over there was forest. That's behind Rockland's campus.
Right.
And they wanted $38,000 to come de-stump it and plant grass and all that. And one of our employees, Justin, came up with the idea of renting an excavator with a thumb on it. And he and I, over a period of a month and a half, you were here then, right?
A couple of months.
Or maybe you were just coming
He
in.
was just coming.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
dug it and rented the machine for like $6,500 for 2 months.
So that's just the process that we have to go through
Yeah.
without, you know, getting into all those details, but that is part of the process for those areas that you would potentially have future development on.
Right.
So you could justify clear cutting it, and then with some of those funds as well, prep the land for that finished product that you want,
And that
and help maybe fund
Yeah,
other.
working
that
backward.
guy
is the
right
hard
there
part.
was saying, hey, you
Working
want.
forward is a lot easier than working backward.
And when you think about it, now you say she only found 80,000. I've been on the board this month, this is June, this will be 12 years. And I know Chad did 2 harvests, but I thought it was like 183,000 over several harvests that we got. But even if it was 80,000, I guarantee you when those were planted, it didn't cost 80,000 to do that. These are trees that are 20 years old. It might have cost 15,000. There's still a profit. And we made money.
I can tell you just on generalities, typically a forestry investment is between 6 and 8% return. You have to wait, you got to go to the 20, 25 years, but that's just typical return on a forestry investment.
Yeah, I just got one
Got that
more
time frame.
on your information.
Yes.
Under longleaf seedings, it says $200 per thousand. What is that?
1,000 seedlings. So they bundle them in thousands. They sell them by the
By
thousands.
thousand.
Yeah, so we would have to have 150 of those 1,000 bags to do it. And that's at 600 trees per acre, which is, it's on the low end of what the timber management thing is, but it's
Yeah.
also very typical for forestry.
Okay.
So you're saying
Well, I'd
in
like to
general,
suggest
there's
that we
only
look
about a,
at doing that thinning as was described, and then see what it would take to do that clear cutting on the beachfront to gather some.
now that over there on that side is probably just gonna be,
Yeah, how old is that even?
well, it was cleared before. Do you remember when it got cleared and then it grew back up again?
So it's all natural?
Between the old taxiway and the runway actually
Make
got
it-
cleared and thinned out, but That's only gonna be good for biomass. I don't think there's any major pine trees in that.
Yeah, if there's not, that'll
It
limit,
might be a zero sum, I mean, a net, zero net,
yeah.
but it would get it out of here.
Because the biomass that's really hard to do nowadays. A lot of these places have gone to quotas and,
Yeah, the guy that was here to look at something on the biomass said he couldn't even, oh, no, it was at the city council meeting. They're talking about the trees down there on the lake bed. At first, they thought they'd make money off the biomass, and now the guy's saying it's a negative return.
it's a
So-
tough thing to do, yeah.
But
And the other thing I didn't bring up was, so the one stand on here, it says stand 8. So I looked closely at that one and we killed the oaks and everything, but I think Scott, you brought this up. There's still some good pine in there. It's scattered, but there's some good
It is.
pine.
There is.
I think what we should do is hold off doing anything to that because I don't have stand 8 in this stuff and have them clear cut that with the thinning. So let them do the thinning or whatever, and then anything merchantable that they can get out of this, I think that's just extra.
Don't we want to, I thought we wanted to do, what would be wrong with clear cutting down the southern portion off the end of the runway 05 or off of 23 departure?
I just
Because you
wanted to do that because of the runway
Right.
glide slope.
Right, exactly. So why not clear cut it?
Well, and you're not talking about pine there, you're talking about live oak and other
Some of
things
that's
too,
oak,
aren't
there
you?
are some pines in there, and it doesn't need to go way into there, just a little bit, but,
I mean, while we're there, yeah, you could probably cut out what you want, if nothing else. It depends upon if there's anything merchantable there.
Because kind of like stand 8 you have is also helping you with the RPZ.
Yeah, that's what
So-
that red is. I kind of extended it based on the other
So I think
RPZ.
if you did the same thing down on that southern tip, it would do a similar kind of,
Now, I estimated 1,500 feet. Is it 1,500 feet off the end of the runway, or how deep did you go with that? Because that's what it looked like on Google Earth. I went like 15 or
I
16.
don't know, I mean, if you look at the length here, this is real sufficient. But this is the part I asked Chad to cut before, and it's kind of funny because I thought the trees would be in a linear line with the runway, I guess, and we didn't explain that to the loggers. We intended it to go out like this and like that, but they didn't do that. This followed an.
Oh, you're trying to sort of a fan effect?
Increase that.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
So it'll be 15 or 20 years before a tree will ever
Right.
interfere
right.
with that glide slope again. Down here, you think, oh, there's a big cluster of trees. These are all saplings that had they been, I think that had been cut there. Do you remember, David, that might have happened when you were on the board originally?
It was, actually, it was clear cut, and what's grown back there is scrub, just
And that's why-
underbrush.
I try to keep mowing. I don't do it all the time, but like this down here, I try to mow this down here twice a year because this is all saplings coming up again. That could have been done, but now it's too late. The bush hog won't
Yes,
do that.
no,
But they're not big trees. They're scrub. They're about this high. They're useless.
and it's oak. and
Maybe that
pine.
chopper could do it,
I was gonna say, yeah.
but
I
there's
mean,
no harvest.
Yeah. Now this looks, so from the end of that runway though, would you also do a fan to the right or to the left?
Well,
Or, because I had it drawn just straight out from the,
this is
runway.
probably the closest on the RPZ that would be interference. You see, that's a long one. This is a very long one, and now this is a long one. Simple logic says it would be good to go in here and clear this maybe out to the gas line and clear that, but that'll be chopped up. If this is all open, plus if anybody ever does any development in here, like we talked about, those are pines, you can see they're in rows. You know, I think that getting rid of this helps improve this and could possibly help improve this over here. But I don't think there's that many pines in there. I'd have to look.
Couldn't you
Really
couldn't you also take the stuff on the north of that old taxiway there?
Well,
Just the
again,
beachfront?
this is something I mentioned when Maria was here, that I'd like, if it was up to me, I'd like to get a third of this back regardless of how this lease works out.
Yeah.
For aviation development.
Yeah, clear cut the
More
whole thing.
realistically,
Well, that's what we've been talking about.
50% would even be better in my
Right.
opinion.
Well, regardless of whether we get it back or not, we can still clear it, it's our trees.
That's right.
Right.
And that's money that helps to
But
pay
I'm
for
just
the
saying,
Well,
it could be
the
site,
thing to
it could
remember-
be,
that oaky stuff though, you're not gonna get anything for that. That's just, you're just You're just spending money to clear.
You'll be lucky to break even for them to just take it for free, just to get it out of here. But then, once they do that, we've got to keep it maintained,
And only the pines, if they're big enough. I mean, if they're only
mowed.
7 to 9 inches, you're talking about pulpwood, which is not a tremendous amount. It depends upon the age of that stuff. I've actually never ridden through there to see what that is. I have no documentation on how old those trees are.
Is there a way to get estimates of these different areas so that we can see?
Cruise it.
If I go out there, I can tell you what.
You can cruise it and tell you.
Oh, don't say that word.
Okay.
No cruising. I gave that up a long time ago.
So I think that would help us be able to make a plan, because, again, I think, in my opinion,
Well, maybe it'd be helpful if she did give us an estimate on that area.
yeah, I would
I'm
get
not good on
estimates.
estimating volumes. I don't even like to do that. I was hoping, the way I envisioned it, if we did the thinning, or if we identified a place to clear cut, that we would simply let people come in and they will cruise it themselves.
Yeah.
And you let them offer you
Okay,
a price per ton for
that'd be great for the different.
whatever they
stands.
do, because what they do is they figure out, they give their own things. Some of them might come up with 50-50 pulpwood and chip and saw. Some might come up with 40-60, but they'll give you one price.
Yeah.
And that makes it much easier
Yeah.
to administer a timber
Okay.
sale, because
Yeah.
every load that comes off is the same price.
And I would ask,
As far as we're concerned.
I would ask you to do it on all the areas inside of the leased space as well.
The other advantage we talked about in the workshop, and for the edification of everybody else here, is if she waits until hurricane season starts any day now, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm sure we're in it.
June 30th or something?
June 1st.
June 1st, so one thing that Chad, when he was on the board, said that's advantageous to us is we're on the Florida Ridge here. We're at 196 feet. When everybody gets hit by a tropical storm or whatever, and those other forests get wet and the loggers can't get in, the value of our trees goes up. So and I heard
And
you
you can
say
pretty much
timing is
figure
everything.
winter. Yeah, you figure winter is, well, in Florida, you never know, it's supposed to be wet. Generally, it's wetter, you talk about, probably like October, November, it's probably gonna be wetter. That's when people will be struggling to find a place to do. Now, the only caveat to that is stand 2 is not a sand ridge. And that's where we want to do the 200 acres. No, it's just like regular
Oh, the tour,
flatwoods.
yeah,
Yeah, it's just like regular flatwoods anywhere here.
Stand 2, I
It
don't see
starts
it on-
raining, it's the stuff right above it's.
Is it on Governor's Road?
We looked at that the other day. Remember, it was this big area and we
Yeah.
said, oh, well, that's identified for thinning.
Oh,
So there's a lot, it's a gamble. It's always a gamble, but you hit it at the right time with the right contractor. The only thing I can say is that, that would at least, you'd be offsetting some of the cost of the reforestation. But where we are now is, we've got to do this now or we're going to end up with that again, and it'll just be a waste of money what we did. Because
and this is the problem we've had. We've been kicking the can down the road. We've been taking money from the piggy bank every time we do a harvest, but we've put nothing back in it. Nothing.
there's got to be some discipline once you get past this, because there's not another clear cut planned in this thing. And and even though the number's on the paper, if you read it, it says, look at this in 10 years, or it'll say, you can either
Right.
do this or you can do this. So, but in the actual hard plan, there's nothing planned for another 3 years beyond that thinning. So that's something to keep in mind. This is taking about 10 years and doing nothing
But when we
you
thin
cut it
this, why don't
off.
we go ahead and take that money that's received
Yeah.
and put it aside in that account for
Well,
forestry?
I think, here's the
And then-
thing.
And then on the northeast portion of 1129, we'll clear cut where we don't want to replant.
I think what you would want to do is have one bucket for any timber income.
Right, right.
Take out what you need to reforest,
Exactly.
and then leave that in there for later, because you're going to end up with someplace down the road where it's going to cost more than what you thought it would.
Right, right.
So just for the board's information. Last year, when we started the forestry plan, Carlton got us the plan, and Terry, we had Rebecca Williams, our CPA, put in our QuickBooks an income line for forestry as well as an expenditure so that we can track that now.
Okay, good, yeah.
And for this point in time, I mean, I would say, I don't know that the thinning will cover, but it should still get a good bit of it,
Right.
I would think.
Yeah.
What are you thinking, 15,000?
Oh, no, you're not gonna have me name a number.
Well, I'd say let's go ahead and get started on
Yeah.
I don't
thinning
know.
and get some income in and put in that
Yeah,
account.
And get them to tell us how much they think we can get for the other areas.
I can
that
go
don't have
ride
anything.
through there and just look and see if there's, I mean, because what you don't want to do is cut just to cut, and you should have waited 10 more years, you
Yeah.
know? That's the only thing. Unless you already know, just like if you've got the 100 acres over here that you want to do permitting and everything on, and you're like, we need this clear cut for it to be like we want it.
'Cause we don't
that
wanna
would be a
replant.
good place to do it, you know?
Like, where's the Clay County Economic Development plot? Is that forested?
There's a little bit, it's mainly behind the corporate hangar. It's actually this area in here, it's some of that.
Yeah, so let's clear cut
It's
that.
actually more right behind the corporate hangar back this way, but it does include some of this and this.
And
As far
again,
as that-
you've got to consider, if it's hardwood, you're not going to get anything for it. And you're going to be left with isolated hardwood like you did over there. But if it's planted pine and I don't know if you all have any natural pine that's just looks like it's planted. I think everything you've got is planted maybe. Then that's the place where you can actually make some money.
Yeah.
But you can't make it, it's just a cost if you're going to clear an oak
But
hammock.
that area David just pointed out has already been, Chad's already done that third row select.
Oh, yeah,
row.
yeah, that's stand 13.
Yeah.
And that's sand pine.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
It's already been thinned. And I don't know how long it needs to go to mature. Now, if you had a tenant coming in there, or if somebody says, okay, now that it's been cleared, when we make the money, we take what we can get.
Right, right. Now, that would be a perfect place to maybe even build up your forestry thing so that you got more options.
So
So why don't we go ahead and agree to thin the stand that's ready for thinning? And then
Get estimates on the others.
get estimates on the other, yeah.
So you don't want her to do the
And
mechanical
approve,
chopping?
no, well, I'm just saying you wasted the money we did last
You
year.
spent the money to have it sprayed.
It needs to have it needs to have all this work done, or you've just,
Or that money was thrown away.
right.
do we have to do all of it? Can we do it in phases?
Well, that stuff's gonna start growing again.
Okay, I'm
No, that's what I'm trying to say is, so this is the perfect time right now. Well, not the perfect time right now. I don't want it done now. It needs to be done like October, November, and then it'll be ready for planting. Really, I want it done in October and burned sometime in November, December, and then planted. But the longer you wait, well, now that you say that, David, I mean, the dead's only going to get deader. But you will have some growth. But if you come back and chop it, what difference does it make at that point? You could decide to do a portion or just leave out a portion, maybe even strategically, because whatever you have other ideas for it. I don't, there was some things said about along Airport Road. I don't remember if y'all had some ideas or something about that stuff south of Airport Road, this stuff right here, but you've got that. You can look at the photo. I mean, that shows you the areas where they're at. Like I said, stand 8, I would leave out anyway, because I think there's too much pine there, and I think we should have them cut it out. So that's extra revenue. You might want to leave out stand 11. There's a lot of oak, and oak can take a while to die. There's some big oak in there. And
I forget, was it stand 2 that's ready for thinning?
yes, that's the part that's sitting above the gas line here. Yeah.
Why don't we go ahead and do that, get that out
Well, yeah, I
there.
think that's kind of I think everybody's kind of on board for that. It's just.
And
a
we use
matter
that to help fund the chopping.
Well, I'd like to see that. I'm in agreement with that. I think we need to revise our plan, though, to reflect some of these other ideas that we've just brought up with respect to thinning in certain areas that we want to do more to or whatever. I'd like to see our plan updated to include that so that, you know, we have a clear plan. And I think just, we're getting ready to do budget. And Craig has shared with us, and if you've been out here, you know that Rockland has not been flying near what they were flying. So our fuel income is what, 2/3 less than what we had budgeted for probably. I mean, so that's a huge impact on our income side for our budget. So we've got other costs day to day, you know, that we have to do. So I say that to reemphasize a phased approach may be a better method for accomplishing this, even though we want to get it done next year. But it may have to be phased over a period of time. The other thing
And
that
can I include, in that phase, I think we need to find a zero sum, it needs to be a zero sum game.
I agree.
We're funding our next stage with the one we just cut, so it has to
Yeah.
start with cutting. And then from that cutting funding, we determine how best to maximize the forestry gains of the replanting and the burning and all those other things. But I'm like you, I don't think we have the money to execute this plan without first seeing how are we gonna pay for it
well, you
from
just,
from the forestry income.
But I don't think the way to go, though, is to say, oh, let's cut this year, find out how much money we have, and then decide what we're going to do, because you're losing growth the whole time.
well, what I'm proposing.
The sooner you put that tree in the ground, the sooner
We're not gonna do
you're
anything
earning
for 30
it.
years with it anyway.
Yeah, but
so
you
what
can't worry about you today, you got to worry about the guy
Well,
down
I'm
the
worried about me
road.
Yeah, we've got a budget coming up. We've got to worry about it today. My proposal is we thin what we can, whatever income off of that, then we use that in a phased approach. If it's this 16,000 we got to do, that's the first thing we've got to do on the plan here, then that's phase one. And then if we, later on, if there's another area that we see that's marketable, then, and I'm talking about in this coming year, this coming fiscal year. So this can be a living document, if you will, in that, as Jim was saying, it's a phased approach that we take money that we earn and then we determine how we best allocate that for more forestry stuff. He mentioned early on, I don't know if y'all caught it, but the roof over here on one of the big hangars, some of the bids we've seen $200,000.
Yeah.
And we've patched them. If you've been on the board long enough, you know we've done a lot of work to patch them, so we didn't have to fork that money out. We need to replace a well, and our bid this year was $45,000 for a well.
There's another building there that needs a roof too. Both of
Correct.
Rockland's buildings need.
The ones with the skylights, we've patched and they need to be replaced. I mean, the guy that came, one of the guys that came said every screw up there is rusty, probably needs to be replaced. So I just say all that because as we do this workshop, we're gonna bring all this stuff and, you know, we're all gonna see that, okay, we're just gonna have to prioritize and see where we do things. I do want to just, in relation to this, just make a mention, and I'll leave this article. This was in the Telegraph last week. North Florida Land Trust several years ago came to us and wanted to purchase 450 acres in our northeast corner of the airport. They had proposed that that property would remain a conservation area and that it would also correlate with the Camp Blanding buffer zone that Camp Blanding continues to obtain, well, Blanding doesn't obtain the property, North Florida Land Trust and some other entities do that to help create this buffer around Camp Blanding. They bought this property, it's actually on the southeast corner of Camp Blanding, outside of the southeast corner of Camp Blanding, 83 acres, and it was purchased for $540,000. When we looked at this before, when they came to us before, we evaluated it. Bill Prang shared with us that just to do the documentation the FAA requires, because it's surveys, it's appraisals, it's a lot of other information, it was going to be at that time $40,000. And that was probably 7 years ago. And at the time, the board didn't have the money. And in talking with the FAA, ADO, they basically would not guarantee that they would approve it. So we couldn't get North Florida Land Trust to put up the money. We didn't have the money. So it basically, they moved on. So that's another idea. Craig and I have had the conversation, we got 2,400 acres out here, 700 of it's the airfield. Do the math. We've got a lot of property that can be developed, and I think we know where those corridors are. It's along Airport Road, it's the new access road, it's the State Road 100 frontage, it's the 100 acres that Clay County Economic Development is doing the environmental on. So, we've got these places that we can use for future development, and that's shown on our airport master plan.
I got a question. If we, whatever means are necessary, if we're able to get the funds to do the mechanical shopping or whatever you call it, and then Florida Forest Service to burn it, could we just evaluate it every year and as little saplings come up, could we burn it ourselves to keep it down?
No. Oh, no, do not do that.
What is that?
Sure can.
You have to get permits and stuff. For one thing, you got the highway out there and everything. I mean, you're saying you would have to, I would recommend that you would contract with the Florida Forest Service to do it every year, like you
Okay.
talked about there. It's very tricky. You've got to know
Well-
everything about fire, weather, behavior and all that
Yeah,
stuff to.
I
to
just
light
hate
that
to
up.
lose that $38,000 you just spent on the helicopter
So-
spraying it.
So here's the thought. You could do it like, okay, we've got 4 steps and let's just do all of step 1 and then reevaluate it. Or we say, let's pick all the stuff along the airport road and let's just do everything for it. And we take the rest and we put that to next year. I just did a quick calculation. In that case, it would be about $44,000 to do this and then that stand 3 up in the top.
To do
And
what
that
to it?
To do everything, to do the mechanical, the burning, and the planting.
Okay, so how do we pay for it?
Well, because we're gonna do the thinning.
Okay.
I say, we just anticipate that whatever money we get from the thinning, that it's gonna go and offset this.
We're on
Well, I
board.
think that was David's proposal.
Right, but it was, what are you gonna site prepare? Because he was saying, okay, well, we just chop everything, and then we see where we are, and then maybe we burn everything. What I'm saying is, do everything to a certain set of stands, and then wait till the following year to do that based on, maybe how much money you have by that point, because you've done some of this other cutting.
I totally trust your judgment as to what you do where, as long as it's paid for out of timber revenue.
Right.
Well, I know what you're trying to do, and I understand that. All I'm saying is, though, that there's no guarantees for the thinning. Generally, you give them a year. Probably the airport wouldn't do that, but I know a lot of times people have a year to cut it because of weather conditions and everything. But you could just right up front tell them, look, this is a 6-month deal and that's it, and get what you can get,
So just out of curiosity, and I don't want to belabor this anymore, but I've noticed that the timber company that's north of us here, a lot of logging trucks are coming out. I don't know what they're cutting. I don't know if anybody's been flying lately, but there's been two different entrances and exits where trucks are coming out.
Yeah,
And they're the long lots. I mean, they're not trees.
yeah.
So I don't know if that means that the market is up now or that those are just marketable at this.
They were just timber sales that had
So-
been, are you saying the activity in that they've chosen now to cut?
No, it's just,
The activity is in the timber being sold.
yeah.
It's part of a big plan. They've
Okay.
just got certain stands scheduled.
It's their
And that's,
maturity level.
yeah, and then they put out a bid and that's it, yeah. It's all has to do with timing. It's a sustainability thing, so that you have something, you know, that
They own
ongoing.
millions of acres too.
Yeah.
So they can do it all around the
Oh,
state.
yeah.
Move it
Yeah,
around.
you
So-
can jump around and do that, but,
The other option might be, I mean, and I don't know if we had to burn it when it gets on the ground, is whatever that chopper thing costs that you pull behind, is to purchase one of those. If we
Oh,
can
no.
get one of those.
No, no,
What it takes
do that.
only if you're gonna purchase a D6 to,
So you gotta
have the dozer, you can't
Yeah.
pull it with the farm tractor.
and it's a tandem.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you're talking about tremendous amount of horsepower,
Okay.
yeah.
So just to recap, we're gonna revisit our plan
We can revisit all this during the
And-
workshop.
and,
And I'll check, and I'll get a chance to run, hopefully by and just see what's up there. If there's anything merchantable that makes sense, because you want to, you have plans for it. That's all I can.
Sounds good.
think of. Yeah.
Anything else on this topic? Secretary, appreciate you presenting that.
Sure.
Buck, you got anything?
My turn. I got about 8 items.
Couple more.
Here, put a handful of these. We're cutting into my dinner time, so I don't have anything. I'm hungry.
Craig, what do you got? Charlie?
We got a lot going on, but nobody's gonna hear anything in 4.5 hours. So,
What?
Who?
We're all ears.
I did enjoy having you and Dave and David and the city council meeting last night. It's nice to look out, see some friendly faces, and just thank you. Keep doing the great job that you're doing. I assured the whole city council last night that we had a competent airport authority board that would sort through all the emails and letters and FAA send them over the weekend. Y'all did good.
I was watching YouTube, watching the meeting, and just before you said competent, there was like a bleep out. You didn't say incompetent? Maybe it was just a YouTube hiccup.
Goodness.
Thank you, Charlie.
That's your statutory right.
Any other board member comments?
just good to have Councilman Welch with us tonight.
Thank you, David.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. Meeting's adjourned.
And,
8:37.
For all of us.
The next one, we're back at 6 o'clock.